We're going to rank these rookie wide receivers. We're going to put them into tiers, and we're going to talk Dynasty fantasy football strategy around them. But before we do, you need to click that subscribe button because we're talking about these rookies every single day. We're helping you build your Dynasty teams every single day, and it all starts right here. Click that button. Stop missing out. But here's the tier maker. We're ranking 23 wide receivers today. We add 3 every week at random to the list. If your player's not here, it's just not their time yet. But we got to start ranking. We got to start looking at these wide receivers. We're doing it at random. So our first wide receiver coming on down that we're going to talk about today is Keon Coleman. I'm going to throw him up there. Let's talk about Keon Coleman because he is a very important wide receiver prospect in this year's class. He has a very important profile because he's a bigger wide receiver who's solid at the catch points. Route running is okay. He can create separation, but it's not consistent. That's just not part of his game. He's a bigger wide receiver. That's just not what happens with guys who are like 6'4". They're not considered guys that create separation. He's a jump ball guy, strong at the catch points, but he will have value at the NFL level, and it really depends on his quarterback situation, the volume in the offense, and where he goes in the draft. He could get drafted early second round to a team with a good quarterback, and that's going to up his value in Dynasty Fantasy Football. If he goes to a team with a quarterback that does not sling the rock, the volume's not really there, you're going to feel a little down on him. But you got to pay attention to what's going on with Keon Coleman. At the Combine, it was a mixed bag. The 40 wasn't great, but the burst metrics were there. He's got good size on him. He's got good reach. We know he doesn't belong here. Does not belong here. Doesn't belong here. We're thinking here. I think safe right here. I think he belongs right there. I think that's a good spot. As we get more players down, we added a new tier at tier F. But as we get more players ranked down here, we may move him up a bit. I don't see him going to D. I think C is pretty safe with Keon Coleman. Let's move on. Let's see what we can do with these next players. And I want to talk about Troy Franklin here. Let's talk about Troy Franklin. A lot of people like him, and there's a lot of people who are negative about him. He did okay at the Combine, but he did not exceed expectations. Weighed in a little bit light in the pants. But you look at his overall body of work over at Oregon. Good production metrics, good tape, good hands, very cerebral route runner. When I think about how he should be valued, landing spot matters, but I think he's going to get the draft capital, and I think it's going to be okay. There's a good chance he could be that last wide receiver draft in the first round to the Chiefs. Whoever gets that glorious spot, that's if the Chiefs take a wide receiver, is getting jacked up the rankings. I don't see him being tier S. That's impossible. Tier A? No. I think B. I like him better than Keon Coleman. Has a better production profile. I like the tape better. I like that he creates separation a whole lot better. He's also good downfield. He's very nuanced. I'm going to put him there at B. I'm going to keep him there. I think that's where he needs to remain. But it's time to move on to our next wide receiver. Let's go with here, Lad McConkey. Come on down. He killed the Combine. He killed the Senior Bowl. The tape checks out, but we're still waiting for him to break out at college. We're still waiting for him to put together that production. He was hurt this year, but if you prorate it out, he still didn't break out. The thing about Lad McConkey, though, he can create separation. That's what this game is about here at the NFL level. So you got to see which team buys in. You got to wait on that, but we have some upside. We got some speed. You can play him on the outside. You can play him on the inside. He's a candidate to get bumped up to here, maybe here in the right spot. The thing about it, too, if he goes to the wrong spot, he's a candidate to be like around here. I'm going to put him here. I like him better than Keon Coleman. I like him better than Keon Coleman. He's more multifaceted. I feel like I can use him more. Create separation. I think in the right system, he's got more upside. I think Keon Coleman needs the exact right system. The exact where Lad McConkey's a little bit more versatile. And if I'm drafting today for fantasy, I would probably be pulling the trigger on McConkey a little bit more. Let's move on. Let's move on to another hot wide receiver. Xavier Worthy, come on down. Very good production profile. One of the few wide receivers who has an age 18 breakout age. We only got 2 right now, Jacob Cowing and him. That being said, we also hit at the Combine. You go to the tape. He's got wicked route running. He's got speed. He's got speed after the catch. He can take the top off the defense. He can create separation. He can really do it all. Let's see where he goes, but I think he's going to go pretty high in the draft. And I think he should be up here in Tier B. I think Tier A needs to be in its own spot right now. We need to keep that open. And him and Franklin, who do you like better? Because I know there's people out there that like Franklin better. I know that. And I know there's people out there that like Worthy better. Really, you're just waiting to see where they go in this tier. But still, Troy Franklin's got a lot of upside. Xavier Worthy has just about as much. When you're in a tier, you're ranked pretty close. They're close. That's why we do tiers and not a list. This is a great wide receiver class. It's all going to get jacked up here in a few weeks anyways when the draft happens. Moving on to our next player, Roman Wilson. Come on down. Let's talk about him. He did well at the Combine. He did not exceed expectations. So everybody who posted amazing numbers got all the highlights, got all the talk. But Roman Wilson did well. He's got a good highlight package. Did well at the Senior Bowl. He was the wide receiver at the Senior Bowl. He got all the mentions, all the talk. The thing about him is if a team falls in love with him, they're going to scoop him up. He can create separation. He's got speed to burn. And I feel like I got him locked into a spot here in the rankings. I feel like it should be right here. I like him a little bit more than Lad McConkey. I'm coming around a little bit more on Lad McConkey. But Roman Wilson, between the two, wins out still for me. I like Roman a little bit better, but I feel like it's very close with those two wide receivers. But we got to keep things quick. We got to move on. Xavier Legette. He has a special place in my heart because he's a very fascinating wide receiver prospect. He's got speed to burn. He's got the size, top tier size, adjusted athleticism. He's a little bit raw, but go back and look at the Senior Bowl. He's a little bit nuanced too. You can't take that away from him. He can break off routes. He can create separation. He's very assertive out on the break when covered into 1v1s. When you look at his game in college, he wasn't asked to do everything. He doesn't have the same experience as a lot of other wide receivers. But when you look at the size of just athleticism, that could allow him to pop. That could be that sneaky wide receiver right here that just becomes productive out of nowhere. And you're like, I kind of knew. There were some signs, but I didn't go all in. I feel like that could be him. And I had him ranked down here prior to the Combine. And the reason why he was there is because if he failed the Combine, we would have to send him to hell. We would have to send him down to here. I'm not calling that hell. Hell's probably like down here somewhere. But if he would have failed the Combine, we would have to send him to hell. He did it. He passed. He did well. I want to see where he gets drafted. I do not think he'll get the same draft capital as these guys, but I don't think he's going to be far off. We have these tiers for a reason. I think D is fine. If you're in D, you're more like in B last year. B or C. You're up there. Compared to any other year, you're a B guy. If you're in D, you're a B. If you're in C, you're kind of like a top tier B. If you're in B, A, or S, you're kind of like an A guy last year or any other draft. Think about it that way. Think about it that way. This is a weird wide receiver class. You do not look at these wide receivers year by year and think of them as 1 through 10. Because 1 through 10 this year is a lot different compared to like 2015, 2016. It's just different. Year to year, it's different. The talent pool's different. This year's jacked with wide receivers. You just got to stay open-minded with them. We're moving on to the next guy here. Jaylen Polk, come on down. With Jaylen Polk, when I think about him through the process, I go back to him, and I go back to him, and I go back to him, I go back to the tape. There's one day I'm high. One day I'm slowing down. Then I come back up, and I go back down. He's got good ball skills, productive in fantasy football. He can get downfield, he can make plays happen. He's got a good ADOT. He's got a good highlight package. He's strong at the catch points. I think Tier D-ish might be where he belongs. Tier D-ish. That's where he belongs with me. Maybe E-ish. I'm going to keep him in D for right now. Maybe I move him. Maybe I won't once I get more players in here. But remember, this is a very good wide receiver class. Let's slide him to E right now. Let's just stay versatile with him. And let's move on to the next player. Malachi Corley. He got that Steve Smith push. Big slot receiver and get you that yak. He's got a lot of dog in him. He came out of high school as like a cornerback weighing like 160, 170 pounds. And then just got thicker. Built up muscle throughout his time at Western Kentucky. Now he's a big physical slot receiver. You might be able to put him on the outside a little bit. The thing about him, you look at his skill set, You definitely got him pegged as a slot guy. He can get you yak, a guy you can move around the offensive too, get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage and everything else, allow him to make those plays. You also look at him as a G5 wide receiver. That kind of scares you a little bit. You also look at where he could be at. If he goes in the right spot, he could be that sneaky play. Those sneaky plays probably need to be in D. Usually your tier ends up telling a story. Tier D is starting to be those sneaky plays who have those traits that could allow them to exceed expectations. Tier C is kind of similar, except we're expecting them, or we have a very good feeling they'll get the draft capital, which means they're going to get more opportunities to prove those traits at the NFL level. Tier B, they're very good ball players. They're usually Tier A or Tier S guys, depending on how you identify Tier S in any other draft class. Tier A, we'll go over that later. Tier E and Tier F, we're still figuring out those stories for this week. But let's move on. Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing, a very productive wide receiver, broke out early at age 18 at the G5 level. Then we went to Arizona. We got more production there. Solid route runner, did good at the combine. We got some upside with Jacob Cowing. I feel like E is a good spot. If I put him to D, I feel like I'm jumping my skis a little bit. I like him. I feel like in any other class, I'm going all over him. And I feel like he's going to be a late round pick in rookie drafts that I'm slamming that button on. And in the right spot, I feel like he's climbing the depth chart pretty quick, especially with a good quarterback that could lead to fantasy production. I can definitely say that about Polk too. Cowing, I'm keeping my eye on. There's no way I'm putting him in F. He's got a good production profile. He's got good athletic metrics to back it up. But let's move on to our next guy. And I want to talk about Ricky Pearsall. I like Ricky Pearsall. And the more people that come to my channel, the more people I hear about liking Ricky Pearsall. He's got good ball skills. He did well at the Combine. He did well at the Senior Bowl. Look at his tape from this year. If you don't have that kind of time, look at the highlights. But the dude can post up at the catch point. He can rise up. He's got good length on the arms when the ball's in the air. He can stretch out overhead away from his body to bring in the catch. Can break off routes. We saw that. Could be a sneaky play this year. Could be a very sneaky play this year in drafts. And I think he might get more draft capital than expected. That being said, when I think about Ricky Pearsall, I like him. I like him a lot. I think Tier D, I think he flirts with Tier C. That might be my bias. Fighting bias and thinking of these guys, I think that's a good ranking right there. I think that gives validity to Tier D. I like Pearsall a lot. I have nothing but good things to say about him. I just want to see where it goes. And I feel like people are going to be rising him up here soon. But let's keep him there. Tier D is looking solid. Tier C is looking solid. Now we're going to Brian Thomas. We got to talk about a big dog here. Brian Thomas can get downfield in a hurry. Very solid release package. Killed the combine. Killed the highlight package. Has good production numbers last year. The thing about him, we know he's getting drafted in the first round. We got to compare him to those first round picks. And when I think about him compared to these guys, I feel like he's more of a lock, more of a home run swing. I'm going to put him right here. I'm going to put him right here, and I'm going to keep him there. I'm going to keep him there. That's where he's going to be at. I think he's going to get higher draft capital than these guys. I think the NFL is going to like him a little bit more, and they're going to draft him a little bit earlier. I think his skill set plays well to the NFL game. You can use him as a deep threat. You can use him in the intermediate. I think he's going to have some upside, and I think he's going to go in a spot in the draft where he might catch some good quarterback play. We're moving on to our next guy here. A.D. Mitchell, come on down. A.D. Mitchell, come on down. Look at the tape on him. Breaks out routes like a mother. He sure does. He can create separation. Good ball skills downfield. Killed the combine. You see the speed on field. You see it all on field. You got some production metrics there. Did well last year at Texas. I'm keeping him where I had him. He's with Worthy. He's with Franklin. And I do not want to jump my skis. I think he's going to flirt with first-round potential in this draft. We have a lot of wide receivers that could. And we have a lot of other positions in the draft that has some upside as well, which could dilute down the position a little bit. I think A.D. Mitchell is a grand wide receiver. I think he's good. I think he's got some upside, and I want to shoot for upside. He's got a little George Pickens in him. Moving to our next player, Brendan Rice. Brendan Rice, come on down. Brendan Rice looked good at Senior Bowl. Did all right at the Combine. You look at him on tape, you see the hands, you see how assertive he is, and now we just got to see where he goes in the draft. Does he get diluted out? Does he get drowned out? When I think about how he plays on tape versus production profile, he almost broke out with 2 different collegiate programs. This far off from the numbers. When I think about him compared to Cowing and Jaylen Polk, like, he's not too far off from Polk, but I like him a little bit better. I think he's got a little bit more upside and a little bit more certainty. When I think about him with D, he fits in well with these cats right here. He just fits in well, and I'm just going to slide him right there. Remember, D, C, B, these guys are a revolving door in value and rankings with each other, and we're very fluid there. It's not one for one. It's not like, oh, he's got Franklin ahead of AD. Nah. That's why they're tiers. That's how tiers work, if you didn't know. But we're moving on. Javon Baker. One of my favorite wide receivers in the class. The thing about him, everybody talks about him on Twitter, and everybody talks about him as if he's their favorite wide receiver. So I'm like, I don't fit in here. I like looking at the late round guys. I like looking at a guy no one's talking about as much. But Javon Baker, turn on the tape. He's got a good release package, very assertive out of the break, good hands, very assertive mindset. Go look at the interviews at the Senior Bowl. If you ask him about 50-50 balls, he will get mad at you that you're not calling at 100-0 balls towards him. That being said, when I rank him, when I look at him, I want to know what the NFL thinks about him. If the NFL doesn't like him, then you know what? I'm still poverty drafting. I'm going to take him late. But I feel like he feels best here. Feels best with this tier. I can't justify putting him up. I think as a player, I would want him here, but I feel like that's biased. I think here's just fine. In this group of guys, tier D could easily be tier C in a heartbeat after the draft. I'm going to put him up here. Just move those guys around, let it cook a little bit. We're moving on. Malik Washington, come on down. Taking a look at him. He's an under-the-radar wide receiver that gets talked about a lot on podcasts, because he killed the Shrine Bowl, the Shrine game, did well there, has a good production profile, looked good at the Combine. There's a lot of upside there. When I think about him, it matters where he gets drafted, who drafts him, where he goes. Good wide receiver is going to climb a depth chart. He's going to climb a depth chart. I think E's a good spot for him. I can't put him in F. I don't know if we'll get to F tier. The thing about this class, there's not a guy here that I'm ranking that I don't like. I like everybody to some context in this draft so far that we got ranking so far. We got to move on. And I packaged these guys as brothers in the rankings, Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr., because when I talk about one, I got to talk about the other. The reason why is I got them garnered as both generational prospects. I got them both top-tier players. I do not care where they go in the draft. I'm going to hold them there. I draft talent over situation. That's eventually going to win out, especially with the value in Dynasty startup drafts, what we're seeing on the market here. They're both going to hold that for a long time. When I think about them both, they belong in S. If you have Nabers first, go with it. Nabers first. If you have Harrison first, go with it. I switch them around all the time in my head. I'm just going to have them here. I have them oscillating. They belong there. But does Rome Odunze belong there? Does he belong in S tier with Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr.? You talk to some people, and they'll say yes. You talk to others, and they say no. He's going to be a little bit lower in the draft, a few spots. The production profile is not the same. He's an older wide receiver. The athletic specs check out. He looked good last year. There's a lot of good things on his tape. He could be more productive than those guys. He's not holding the value right now the same as those guys. I think right here is a great spot. At the beginning, he was clearly just tier A by himself. Brian Thomas is in there because where he's projected to go in the draft, where those quarterbacks are at, I think that's a great spot for him to have some upside. I like Brian Thomas. I like Rome Odunze. The fact that they are in tier A means they're good. That being said, we're moving on. We're going to Tez Walker here. We're going to take a look at Tez. We got some upside here with the speed. We can get downfield. Did not look good at the Senior Bowl, but we did well at the Combine. We kind of got things right there. The thing about him is where he goes in the draft. Can he climb the depth chart? he's going to be a good clear-out guy. If anything, we're looking at Tez. That being said, I feel like E's a good spot for him. Just that tier of guys who has those traits that need to go to the situation we got to be patient with, that could climb their depth chart over time. But good ADOT with him, can stretch the field. A quarterback that wants to push it, getting opportunities on the field, could allow him to be fantasy relevant, if not be at least a splash play guy. Our next wide receiver, Cornelius Johnson from Michigan. Talking about him, he did well at the combine, looked good, has some length. You go to the tape, he's got strong hands, great at the catch points. Could be a surprise hitter for us. Production profile is not too great. His draft profile is kind of lacking. I bet you he gets drafted. I think the odds of him exceeding like a Polk or a Cowing's not as good. Let's have him at F just for the sake of him being at F. Last week I think I had him up around here. I think let's put him at F just for the sake at putting him at F. And I think he belongs there. Production profile, him getting out of the release concerns me. I think that's where he belongs. The NFL could change my mind, but we shall see. Going on to our next three wide receivers here. They are new to the rankings. So let's talk about them. Our first one, Johnny Wilson. Very good prospect. I think he needs to move to tight end. I think he needs to make that change soon and just develop there and just really learn the position. A bigger wide receiver with a lot of upside. But if he cashes in at the wide receiver spot, he could be an immense play. And when I think about him, I think about the upside. I think about the potential position change. Fits well in E. Like, I can't put him here. Like, on tape, I can see where I can make that narrative. But I can make a narrative with those guys to go up there as well. I think here works. I think the potential upside is higher than everybody. I think the odds of hitting that might not be super grand. But I love it, and I want to cash in on that anyways. I think he just belongs here. I think he fits in there. I can't put him in F right now. I feel like that's too low. I think E's a great spot. The next wide receiver we're talking about is Thrash. Thrash, come on down, Amari Thrash. And look at the tape on this guy. He's a very sneaky prospect. Very quick out of the breaks. Can get downfield. We got some length on him. Could be a surprise prospect. Did well at the combine. Could be a guy drafted in the later rounds that could climb a depth chart here. You need to pay attention to him. That being said, he's an E guy. He's an E guy. I think he's being slept on. I think if you put in what the market thinks of him, maybe you can put him in F, but I'm going to put him there. But our last guy today, Jalen McMillan. And he has been talked about among the draft community for quite some time. He's very nuanced. He can break off routes. He could climb a depth chart, but we get a lot of those guys too in the back end of drafts that don't pan out. He wasn't productive. We've also been dealing with injuries. I feel like F. I think I can make a case here, but I think F is a good spot for him. I'm going to put him with Thrash. I'm going to put him right there. I respect the nuance and the route running. I respect the way he creates separation and how he can make plays downfield. I'm not going to send him to F. Johnson can be there by himself, but those are the rankings. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.